G'day and welcome to TICKER Climate. It's great to have your company. My name is Holly Stearns. On TICKER Climate, we tackle the climate crisis facing our planet, and then we examine what actions governments and corporations should be taking. Now, each week we speak with key people in this space. My co-host Scott Hamilton is a climate change and energy expert. Scott is an author, researcher and policy advisor with a mission to tackle the big issues and accelerate climate change action. Scott, it's great to have your company every week.
Hello, Holly. Great to be here again.
Let's get right into it. A big week this week. United Nations researchers are set to publish their strongest statement yet on climate change in the IPCC report, which is set to be released within an hour's time or so. But I wanted to unpack it firstly, Scott. What actually is the report and why is it so important?
Sure, Holly. So this is actually the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change that's about 234 scientists from around the world, about over 60 countries, who work on this report, this is the sixth report that they've done, and it's really about the science of climate change. So it's really, and this part of the report, which actually comes in three parts, the first part, which we'll see today, is telling us about how does the climate system work? How much carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emissions can actually go into the system, and what does that mean in terms of global warming? How far will it go in terms of 1.5 degrees Celsius rise or 2 degrees Celsius rise or else further? So that's the sort of information. Now it's a report and it's politically neutral, so it doesn't say what governments should do, but it's the world's best scientists, the most important scientists, saying this is what's going on and this is what is happening to our environment, to our climate.
Yeah, so basically it's the science that is coming out now. What do you think we're likely to see in this report within the next hour or so?
Yeah, so it is not just bad news, Holly, it is terrible news. So if we recall, this IPCC has been going since 1988 when we started to get concerned about global warming, and they've done a number of reports over the years, but this is the first one since 2013, and we know that we're seeing the real impacts of climate change now with droughts, floods, bushfires and extreme heat waves, which are occurring right now across the world. And that's what the scientists told us back then was going to occur. So that's occurring now. And what this is all saying is we need to move much quicker if we're going to have any chance of keeping global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And yeah, it's not... Yes, go on. Yep.
No, sorry, you go on, Scott.
I was going to say, so it's no longer talking about 2050. There's no longer 30 years to work on it. There's no longer even 10 years. It is a here and now. And even the UK minister, who was in charge of the COP26 talks in Glasgow in November, was saying that we're on the brink of catastrophe. And it's a here and now issue. We've got to take really strong action this year, right now.
I wanted to ask, what impact will this report have on the action that will be taken by world leaders? And as you just mentioned, we're coming up to the COP26 meeting in Glasgow in November. So what action is going to come from this report?
Yeah, so look, this is going to be the starkest wake-up call in terms of the impact of climate change and the impact of greenhouse gas emissions on our globe that we've seen. So it's going to be a really stark wake-up call to all the policy leaders. Now, there's a report that will come out that I recommend that everyone has a look at, and it's the summary for policy makers, which really takes it's quite a dense report. So there's literally hundreds and thousands of pages in terms of the detail, but there's a summary report that gives a really good explanation about what all this means and what does it mean for the global leaders, for the G7, for the G20, for all the presidents and all the prime ministers around the world. And what it means is they're going to have to take a lot more action. They're going to have to stop funding and having more fossil fuels. Means not having more coal-fired plants, and they need to be phased out over the next few years by 2030. We need to be looking at things such as the building materials that we use. So we have an enormous amount of emissions which occur through building materials, all that concrete and all that steel. So that's going to be the challenges, which is really, this is going to say we need to address, and we need to do it now.
Yeah, it's definitely a very important report. Now, touching on what you've just said briefly about, the fires that we're seeing ravage the world at the moment, Greece, Turkey, California, Siberia, are all experiencing dangerous heat waves. What does that say about climate change?
Yeah, so look, it's really saying that we're actually experiencing what dangerous climate change is right now. And so the extreme bushfires, and there's footage on the channel now, are very reminiscent of what we experienced with our Black Summer here, when we had those evacuations at Malakuta, which were over on that New Year's Eve or just around that time. That's what's happening in Greece at the moment. I saw some horrific footage of people being evacuated by a ferry from this inferno. And that's happening not just in Greece, it's in Turkey, it's in California. There's the Dixie fire that's been going for 3 weeks now. And in Siberia, we're seeing fires, which is unbelievable. And so part of so go on, Holly.
No, I was going to say, it's so overwhelming to see that footage there on the screen, isn't it? And so this then links back to the IPCC report that is about to be revealed as well, which signifies that climate change is happening in real time, right?
That is exactly right, Holly. And it will also talk about how we used to, the models have now got better at working out what is the impact of climate change on these extreme events. So we're a lot better at working out what is going on, and it's not good news. And we think it's bad now. We think that the Black Summer in Australia was bad. But that's going to happen more often, and it's going to be more severe. So things are going to get worse, is what it's saying to us.
Indeed, Scott. Now, this can be quite an overwhelming topic, especially with many people recovering still from the Black Summer fires in Australia. Please remember to call your local helpline for support if this does trigger anyone, the topic that we're speaking about here. Now, Scott, there's a term going around called Coal Keeper, the Coal Keeper program. I have no idea what this is about, but I'm hoping that you can inform me.
Yeah, so there's as usual, our federal politics seems to be still going in the wrong direction when it comes to climate change, unfortunately. There was two big events occurred, or things happened last week. One was the changing of the rules, so the ARENA, the Renewable Energy Agency, could invest in carbon capture and storage and fossil fuels, rather than in solar, wind and batteries and microgrids and things that actually help the climate in terms of addressing climate change. The other really important one was there are new rules that are being put forward as part of the Energy Security Board. And basically what those rules are about are to saying that the retailers, so we all know our retail that we pay our electricity bill each month or each quarter, will have to pay capacity payments, so special payments to coal-fired power stations to make sure that they're there. So this is going to be a direct impost on our electricity bills, more money going to coal-fired power stations, not to clean energy, not to wind and solar and those sorts of things, which is quite flabbergasting, really. And it's about $3.2 billion is what's estimated in 2023 alone. And the likes of Tim Buckley that we had on the other night, the other week, has been doing some really important analysis in this, and I'm sure that Tim will be able to share that with the wider community. But again, it's just an example, is because the market's not working, people are not investing, these coal-fired power stations are going broke because people are leaving them. This is the Angus Taylor and the federal government trying to invest in keeping them alive, which is what it's been coined as the Coal Keeper program. But it's no joke, Holly. It's going to impact on people's bills, and it's not going to help the environment either.
Indeed. I wanted to ask you, Scott, about, moving over to Biden and in the US. He's just made a big bid or a big order in regards to electric vehicles. What's your thoughts on this?
Look, well, this is really the good news story about all that bad news which we've talked about just the last while. Biden has, I think, really showing the way. He's saying, when I think about climate change, I think about jobs, creating new jobs. And the sorts of jobs that he's talking about are jobs associated with electric vehicles. And he's aiming to get half the fleet electric by 2030. And he's getting all of his government fleets to go electric. So he's really taking this head on. He's saying that we're going to build these cars in America and we're going to create new jobs. And that's a fantastic story, and that's exactly what we should be doing in Australia. We're actually talking about this tomorrow at the Smart Energy Council in New South Wales. And to their credit, the New South Wales government, Matt Keane and Andrew Constance, are taking great leadership in Australia on this front as well, with their electrification of the transport system. And so there'll be more about that tomorrow if people want to tune in. I'm sure they'll be able to.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, it's really great that Biden is making such a powerful move in that space, in the electric vehicle space, and really leading the way. Now, in some other positive news as well, I wanted to finish off the show on a positive note. And our shows go so quick, we don't get to fit everything in. But a solar plane can now fly for 90 days. And we're going to show the footage on the screen. Super cool. Scott, what do you think of this?
Yeah, look, this was amazing. A friend of mine showed me this the other day, and so it's the US Navy has developed this solar plane, which you can see now, and it can last in the air for 90 days, which is amazing. So obviously the Navy's got reasons that it's useful for them, but it's also useful for lots of environmental benefits. Like, just think about monitoring the fishing across the oceans, addressing the problems in terms of pollution and rubbish and those things. And perhaps this will mean that we don't have to be putting so much space junk out to the outer atmosphere. We can use these sorts of drones and these things. So I actually think it's quite a remarkable innovation. And I do think we're going to see lots of benefits that we haven't even thought of yet. So these are quite a good story. And it's solar power that's meaning it can happen, which is really cool.
I love that. It's super, super cool. Scott, thank you as always for coming on to Ticker Climate. I love co-hosting this show with you where we touch on all the important topics in this space. Lastly, I wanted to get a wrap up of you before this IPCC report gets revealed. What do you think? How could you sum it up in one sentence?
Look, it is not just bad news, Holly, it is terrible news. And we need to be taking really strong action on climate change this year. And at COP26 is where it's going to happen in Glasgow. That's our one chance to really turn this around.
Scott Hamilton, thank you as always. We'll see you next week.
See you, Holly. Pleasure to be here.